Who's this? Where are you calling from?
My name's Eric from the Bay. I'm just calling because I wanted to talk about this Platner issue. Just the background on me, I'm a 12-year Army veteran, and I just feel I've been really interested in watching what's going on with, these sort of accusations of, Platner and people defending Platner, like that we're being credulous, believing that he didn't know what this tattoo meant, or that somehow he should have known what the tattoo meant. And I just wanted to share a story that from my time in the Army, which is, a few years before I got out, I was in a locker room changing. I look over at one of my, fellow soldiers, and I look over, he has a hammer and a sickle tattooed on his chest, crossed, And so obviously, sort of famous symbol, you can't really, confuse it for much else. So I asked him, I said, what is that? Are you a leftist, a communist? He sighs and more or less tells me, no, he got the tattoo when he was young because he's of Russian descent and he thought it was a symbol for Russia, right? So this completely notable symbol that's hardly mistakable, he tattooed it on his chest, fully mistaking what it meant, right?
Yeah.
And still has that tattoo to this day. Not a political guy. I've known the guy for years. I know he's not lying. And so these guys that come into the Army, Platner joined at 18 in 2003, sometime right after high school, got the tattoo, according to him, in 2007. He's in his early 20s. And the idea that, these guys in their early 20s, even now, much less 20 years ago, would have been so brushed up on their Nazi symbolism that if I were to take them into a tattoo parlor, here or abroad, and they walked in and looked at the flash wall and said, is that a Totenkopf? I would have thought you were a Nazi if you did that, if you knew what that was, because That's weird as shit. Why would you know that? Okay, Adolf, calm down. It's insane to me that people think that these people, most people today don't know what that is. 20 years ago, it would just do us well to remember that this sort of hypervigilance around Nazi symbolism and dog whistles was not as prevalent 20 years ago. It's very much a product of politics right now,
100%. And also, I just remind people, too, 2007, in those years, you're just coming into high bandwidth internet. So unless you're looking for something and you want to spend 15 minutes for your dial-up to land you there, it's not like these things. I mean, I will say this. I had never heard the word Totenkopf before this, and I would not be able, and I probably saw it on uniforms in movies, but just never noticed what it was. But if you put all of those skull and bones, I mean, when I was a kid, I had a shirt with a skull and bones that I thought was cool. I mean, my own personal opinion is that he probably figured out what it was several years ago, but was also it's not like I can justify this to me, speaking to himself, and anybody who knows me knows I'm not a Nazi. So am I really going to go and pay for this thing to get all screwed up? That's my guess. Or the guy's not going to be wearing it at a wedding where his sister-in-law is Jewish, and I imagine she invited her family. If he knew at that time or felt like it was obvious, he probably would have been a little bit I don't want to create a problem for my brother. My sister-in-law's family is going to go back and going why was that shirtless Nazi singing at the wedding? I just don't.
Did any of them even say anything? Probably not.
I just don't think any of that it makes sense, frankly. I mean, but yeah.
No, I mean,
go ahead.
I 100% agree. I mean, it's just, to me, I've seen so many people talk about oh, he should have known, or there's no way he couldn't have known. Nobody knew. 20 years ago, nobody was thinking about fascism. Everything was war on terror. Nobody's paying attention. These guys are, high school diplomas coming out, going into what's basically, especially if you're going into the combat arms infantry, you're going to a frat house environment, right? They don't know what this stuff is. So, anybody who's trying to say that he should have or didn't is just trying to launder their perspective through hindsight. You didn't know either. You're just trying to score points or something. But I wanted to also talk about people bring up the fact that he worked for Blackwater afterwards, or, the fact that he was a government contractor. And I just want to say to people, the military does not, despite what they say, automatically set you up for success. And I would argue it can't, because that's just not its function. right? But it's not a guaranteed opportunity when you get out of the military that you're just going to be set up. And especially so for these guys in combat arms, because, you know, Brian may remember this. There's a program in the Army where you go in and put your skills in, and it's supposed to pop out a list based on your skills you earned in the military of all the jobs you could possibly do when you get out. And so I watched a guy who was a combat arms guy put it in, the thing, and the list popped out, manager at McDonald's. And there's nothing wrong, I want to state, with being a manager at McDonald's at all, period. End of story. But if you're given the choice, like I'm going to go make $15 or $20 an hour being a manager at McDonald's, or I'm going to take a $130,000 cush office job with benefits at Northrop Grumman, what choice are you making, right? And maybe you wouldn't make that choice. Maybe you'd make that choice on principle, but you're making that choice out of privilege. A lot of people have to do what is necessary for their families, and a lot of these jobs are just office jobs, right? A lot of these are like no frills, like Excel spreadsheet office jobs, you know, at some location for one of these government contractors. And I've seen a lot of people throwing around words like baby killer or war criminal regarding this issue, and I just find it incredibly short-sighted, and I think those people need to look at how veterans played critical roles in, like, not only anti-war movement but also the civil rights movement. And to say that all these veterans, especially looking back at like Vietnam, all these guys that marched to the Capitol steps and threw their medals they would have had to earn in combat, probably killing people, throwing them on the steps, like you're going to get in between those people because they've killed people and say, actually, we don't want you here, you know? Like, you're not going to give people an opportunity. You're not going to give this highly motivated, highly organized group of people that, honestly, we should be harnessing their put
it this way. Here's why I'm very, very skeptical of that charge, because for two reasons. One, we know that he has written, and people, if they're really actually interested and invested in what was in his Reddit, they would know at this point, or they should know, that he wrote that his time in the military radicalized him. And, looking back on it, there were things that he was proud of in terms of his relationships with the Afghani people. There was other things that he felt horrible about. But here's the amazing thing. I haven't heard a single thing about Seth Moulton being a baby killer. He also served 4 terms in the military. 4 tours in Iraq, I should say. And we don't hear anything about that. And so, like, I am extremely, I think most of the critique comes from people like Seth Moulton, who have Seth Moulton's politics, who want Janet Mills and are reaching for anything. And then the other is, I think that it comes from, basically, I would call them campists, who are concerned and have a problem with a leftist running as a Democrat, because it undermines their project for a third party, which I have seen fail time and time and time again. Those, to me, are the two dominant voices we're hearing. I would say probably the sort of the Janet Mills one is more dominant in this instance. But that's my sense. But I appreciate the call.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah.
And we should say, Brian, when Brian put that in there, it got it spit out. Came out of the military.
What do you think it said?
It said,
Producer,
you've got some time, but eventually, if things go well, you'll be at the Majority Report.
executive producer. This is from Alex Seitz-Wald, who is up in Maine, editing the Mid-Coast Villager.
Yeah, he used to be a national reporter. I think he was at like MSNBC. He moved up to Maine and thought that he was just going to be covering local news, and now all of a sudden...
Now he's the guy up there. But he had this quote from this piece. Avi Gabel Richards, a childhood friend of Platner's who now works as a stonemason and trail worker in Acadia National Park, said he encountered plenty of anti-Semitism and ignorance about Judaism growing up in Down East Maine, an hour from the closest synagogue in Bangor, but never from Platner. He was at my bar mitzvah. Of course he knows I'm Jewish, says Richards, who has known Platner since before they were in kindergarten. If anything, I think he's probably more familiar with Judaism than the majority of people I've ever met or grown up with in Maine. Gable Richards said he has seen Platner's now infamous tattoo many times, but never thought anything of it.
I can add, as a Mainer, we moved to Georgia in between 8th and 9th grade, and that was the first time I met a Jewish person. So.
There you go. And was it awkward when you were looking for the horns?
I was freaked out, man.
Hair stood up on the back of your neck.
Did they go, it doesn't matter how much of an extremist you are. If you have something for free for me, I'm in.
Yeah, I told him, I know the Halloween candy's free, but you got to look out for the razor blades and the poison.
Well, as long as the candy's free. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.